Rumors continue to swirl that the Vikings are interested in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. What does it all mean? Is he even good? Is he a fit for the Vikings? Let's deep dive this guy on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at LukeBraunNFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. You can find this show wherever you listen to fine audio content. You can also watch the show on YouTube or on Amazon Fire or Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today on the show, we're talking about DTR, the UCLA quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He is a fascinating subject, truly very interesting, and in like as backhanded as I want that to sound. He sure is a card. But I actually think I'm going to end up higher on him than most, and I'll get into a lot of that. But the reason I'm talking about him is because the Vikings were connected to him a lot. The Vikings have been connected to a lot of quarterbacks. If you look at, I think Todd McShay just did a mock draft. Daniel Jeremiah did a mock draft like last year. That has the Vikings taking like Hendon Hooker. Because they draft 23, everybody seems to think they're going to take a quarterback, and it feels like they are genuinely going to try to. Can never guarantee it, but they're going to try to if they can trade up or whatever. And, you know, the 4 actual first-round quarterbacks are gone, and so, you know, we like them to take a quarterback, so we'll take this other guy who we maybe think could sneak into the first round. With Hendon Hooker himself, I still don't buy it. I've gone into him in depth a lot more in other shows. I talked about him a lot in my How to Scout Quarterbacks. I did an episode on him specifically before that. But I will point out right now that on the industry consensus board, which is built of big boards by guys like Todd McShay and Daniel Jeremiah and everybody else over at Pro Football Network by Arif Hassan and I think a team of people over there working on it. He's 62. And in Grinding the Mocks, which is Benjamin Robinson's project that aggregates mock drafts, and it kind of says, okay, how high is this guy going? He's averaging being taken 50th. So Hendon Hooker at 23, I'm sorry, I do not believe it. And I believe that there is agent influence at work there with some of the mainstream mock draft guys. I digress. That's just a theory. Because I'm here today to talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who the Vikings, I think, have set up a meeting with. They've done a lot of homework on him. They are going to do a lot with all of these quarterbacks. And I want to start by saying, don't react too much to these kinds of reports. If you'll notice, I haven't been tracking the top 30 visits and draft visits and stuff because I don't think that it's particularly useful information. All it tells you is that the team wanted to know more about a guy, right? It doesn't tell you if that means that they really, really like that guy and they want to make sure that they're investing in the right guy, right? There are times when you don't need to bring a guy in for a visit at all because you just love him. You know, I don't need to know any more information, but we love this guy. What are we going to do? Bring him in and confirm it? No, we love him. Or maybe you really, really dislike a guy and you will never bring him in for that reason, right? Both of those scenarios mean no top 30 visit. The top 30 visit is for guys, well, I don't really know how I feel. I need more information, right? There could be an off-field situation you want to talk about. There could be a weird coaching thing you want to ask about, which I actually have a couple of those with DTR that we'll get into. You know, you could be interviewing him about what did you think about on this play? You know, what are you looking at? How do you feel about, here's some stuff from our playbook. How do you feel about that? And those interviews are more just information gathering, but they don't really, the fact that they had the interview doesn't tell us how that interview went. So don't overreact to it. I think there is some like smallish correlation. And I guess it like ups the odds that that's the player a little bit, but I don't think it's particularly fruitful to say, well, you know, that guy, he had a 0.5% chance of being the Vikings draft pick. Now it's a Now it's a 1.5% chance. Like, I don't think it does a lot. And I would rather think more practically. So with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, let's do just that. Let's think practically about who he is. And so I will kind of tell you the scouting that I have, and this is based mostly purely on the actual tape here. And same with, Hendon Hooker. I'm not going to be box score scouting these guys. If you want box score scouting, you can get that from a number of other Vikings publications, or you can just go to Sports Reference yourself. I want to go a little deeper with these quarterbacks. And I guess the thing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and that whole UCLA offense is, boy, it's wild. It's just chaos and craziness. There's fumbles, there's people missing assignments, there's crazy drops, crazy plays, scramble drills, linemen getting beat. It is just a constant hail of bullets of craziness. And what that produces is, like, what kind of quarterback would you expect that to produce? Like, think for a moment, if you're living in that world. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson started for UCLA for 5 years. He took over after Josh Rosen, whose NFL career has essentially come and gone. I think he's like a practice squad or not. Did he sign a futures deal? He was on our practice squad for a second, wasn't he? Anyways, if you guessed that it would produce a very improvisational but mechanically unsound quarterback, congratulations, you did it. And that's what Dorian Thompson-Robinson is at his core. And really improvisational, but the mechanics aren't there, is kind of the log line here. And you can take that to the office and say that's your Dorian Thompson-Robinson take, and you're not really going to be saying anything all that outlandish that anyone would really disagree with, and you'll sound really smart. To go more in depth on this stuff, though, I do want to talk about the improv gene, because he has the improv gene, and that gene is what everybody is after with a quarterback. It's the Mahomes thing. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts has it. Like, all these superstar quarterbacks, they have that improv gene, right? It's been the thing that people, have wanted from Kirk Cousins but couldn't get for so long. That scramble, run around, throw across your body, schoolyard plays. That ain't the guy we have now, and that would be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The problem is it comes with a million other costs attached, right? But we'll get to those. But he can improvise. The thing about him that gives me the most hesitancy, probably of anything, is that for all the running around he does, when he throws on the run, when he doesn't reset his feet and throw, when it's a jump throw, because sometimes it has to be, like, when you're on the run, you kind of jump into it sometimes. Or if it's just, he's rolling to his left and he's got to flip his hips and throw all that stuff. His mechanics look okay for that. Like, I don't see a lot of room to improve there, and the ball is inaccurate a lot, sometimes embarrassingly so. And if you're going to be a runaround quarterback, you got to be better at throwing on the run. It's just a thing he has to improve at before he's remotely viable as an NFL quarterback. And that's what's going to kind of drop him out of the range of draft picks where, a team is drafting him and hoping that he turns into something. This is what turns him into, quote unquote, a flyer, where you could probably get him on day 3. And if you miss out on day 1 and you go, okay, we'll just kind of throw a random pick out at day 3, that's what you're getting, is improv runaround quarterback that can actually throw on the run. But there's a lot more to him than that. I don't want you to just leave with just that. So let's make sure we really get a holistic Dorian Thompson-Robinson evaluation. So I'm going to go into some of the more pro style stuff, because he's got a lot of pro style things, and then we can go into some of the mechanical weaknesses as well. Before I do any of that, though, FanDuel just released their win totals for the 2023 NFL season. Now, personally, I wouldn't touch them until after the draft, because the draft will often, look, with the Vikings, they could trade Dalvin Cook away. That might affect the line. They could trade for a quarterback or something like that. That might affect the line. Wild stuff could happen. So I would wait. However, there is the XFL right now. Of course, the basketball tournaments have ended, but there's still NBA and NHL that you can go gamble on. There's The MLB you can go gamble on. They have now started. So we've got 3 major professional sports leagues in season for you to go to FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, this is a great time to sign up because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel is safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money line, point scorers, parlay a whole bunch of stuff together, whatever, and you can get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks a million for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. After you are done with this podcast, I would love it if you went to lockedonpodcast.com/newsletters and read my good pal Luke Inman's draft newsletter. I would also love it if you went to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL, where I will have probably sometime on Wednesday, I will have a companion piece to this Dorian Thompson-Robinson show that has some of the film and some of the stuff that I can't do on podcast or YouTube that can be a little bit more direct and show you what I'm talking about a little bit more. But I want to explain to you what DTR is coming from, which is UCLA, which is Chip Kelly, who you probably remember. That is an offense that doesn't really fly in the NFL. We kind of learned. But there is the key to the UCLA offense, and you can kind of see it is a post-snap, pick-aside kind of offense. Compare that to Tennessee, which is a pre-snap, pick-aside offense, where you see how the defense is aligned, and depending on what the play call is, usually it would be that they have, it's either like a man beater on one side and a zone beater on the other. So if you have pre-snap indicators that tell you it's zone, you read the zone side of the play, and then that's that. And Hendon Hooker would never go back to the other side of the play. So much so that the receivers wouldn't even bother really running the routes. They would just kind of jog out there and whatever, because it's not our side. We'll take the play off and save our energy. Baylor did something similar as well. Like that can be a coaching point. With UCLA, it's post-snap pick-aside. Usually, the read is middle of field open or middle of field closed. So in coverages, if you're not familiar with this, you can categorize all coverages if you want to just divide them straight down the middle. Are there 2 safeties? You watch the safeties. Are there 2 safeties that are on their halves of the field, or is there a middle field safety that's like got that deep third part? If there is a middle field safety, then the middle of the field is closed. And if there is not, then it's open, right? So you're reading that. And usually you have a closed beater and an open beater on either side. So Thompson-Robinson, you'll see his eyes. He'll wait. He'll look at that first safety, read what that is, and then he goes and reads his side. But what I love to see sometimes from him is that he will read one side of the play, and that side won't work out for whatever reason. Either, the safety rotated in such a way that caused him to misdiagnose the coverage, or like they disguised it in such a way that like kind of led him to go to the wrong side, and then he's got to flip over to the other side. Or whether sometimes it's, shoot, nobody got open. That was the man. There's just a man coverage. Crap, none of the slants won. I got to go to the other side. And he is willing to do it. He's willing to break the read and go find something. And that's what that improv gene is, where it's, it's not a series of rules. And if, the play that needs to be made isn't written on the recipe page, it won't happen. It's finding a play wherever you can dig one out, whether that means running around and buying time, whether that's scrambling and running. And by the way, incredible rushing talent, absolutely off the charts rushing talent. I would say rivaling Bryce Young, I think. I haven't watched as much Bryce Young, and my understanding of Young is that he's not really a scramble runner in the way that like Richardson is, right? Not in the way that like Justin Fields is. He's more of a dance around in the pocket, evade, but he's buying time, not actually trying to make a play with his legs. That's my understanding, but correct me if I'm wrong on him. He's going to go second, and so I haven't really bothered with him as much, but I want to be like, I want to really drive it home. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, that dude can scramble, and he can rip off a 35-yard explosive out of a broken pocket play against man coverage just because he can. And what I really like about him is that it is not a panicky instinct. He is making informed, defensible, and legitimate decisions to run. He's not just kind of panicking and going. He's kind of saying, all right, nobody's open. I'm going. I see a lane, and I'm going to take it. That is the best chance for this play to get yards, and it's really you can see the intentionality to it, and I really really like that. And I think what I am broadly trying to drive at here is he can see the full field, and I think he can make full field reads. The Chip Kelly offense was kind of a full field read, but not really. It was a half field read once you made the first decision, but making a decision then making a half field read is more than just making a half field read that you decide on pre-snap. And so he has the skill set and the smarts to make full field pro style reads. I absolutely buy it. And he's really good at figuring out where that ball needs to go. He's not great at getting the ball where he needs to get. And that's, I think some of it's a mechanical issue and some of it isn't. And that's a conversation for later, but he plays like he was a 5-year starter on the mental side of the game. You can see that experience in a way that you can't see it with Hooker, who probably is the other guy you're deciding between. If you're deciding, if it's we're up at pick 119 and those two guys are the quarterbacks on the board and we're deciding to take a QB, it's probably between those two guys. It doesn't sound like Hooker's going to fall that far, but I wouldn't be shocked if there was just like a lot of fake media steam and he actually falls a lot. I digress. If you're deciding between those two guys and say the third round, maybe to make it easier, then I'm going to take the guy that has shown more of his 5 years of experience, that looks more like a 5-year quarterback. If we're going to draft an old quarterback, let me, get one that's got a little bit more of that mental polish. And I think Thompson-Robinson has more of that mental polish. He can kind of throw in that rhythm. He can look off a safety, manipulate a linebacker on the goal line, using his eyes as a weapon and to widen things out and to create space and all of that stuff. All of those skill sets, which are really, really difficult to teach, are there. And so this is a pro style mind at quarterback. And I think what this is really building up to, because he's not consistently accurate enough to be a starting quarterback. He just doesn't make those throws. And again, if you're going to be an improv quarterback and you can't throw on the run, you can't be a starter. And that's where I'm going to kind of land on him. If there was any chance of him being a starter, I think you would be insane to let that guy fall past second round, right? And Dorian Thompson-Robinson's going to fall well past that, and there's a reason for it. But when we're talking about him as a backup, what do you want from a backup quarterback? I want a high floor, which scramblers have a high floor, and I want the ability to execute whatever you tell me to execute and the kind of the fundamental understanding of offenses. Those two boxes are checked big time. And he is my favorite backup QB in this class. Maybe Tanner McKee or what's his name? Clayton Tune would leapfrog him if I went into those guys more. But right now he seems like a really good candidate to be a backup quarterback. But the accuracy issues are striking, and they're the reason he's not getting talked about the way, say, Justin Fields got talked about, who had that same talent and a lot of rawness. Of course, Fields is very young too, which is a different thing. But Fields also didn't have insane accuracy issues coming out, and DTRs are brain melting. So that's what I want to talk about next, and the mechanics of that, and kind of what is and what isn't fixable. So there's a lot of brain melting misses on Thompson-Robinson's tape. They're mostly on downfield passes, and they're mostly on touch pass stuff. And here is where the tool sets starts to be like, I don't want to hear that he's toolsy. I'm trying not to say toolsy because he's athletic especially as a runner. He's very athletic for a quarterback. He didn't do great in the agility drills, but a good 40, good jumps, like explosiveness and stuff. And he's a very, very good runner. He has that tool. He's very good at passes over the middle, especially when they are in rhythm. But even when they're not in rhythm, and you have to wait for things to uncover, that's okay. So those are some tools. But when you have to throw to the sideline, they get way more erratic. When you have to throw up and over a defender, there's a hideous interception against USC where he has to throw into a soft spot in the zone, and he's got to get it up and over a linebacker, kind of up and down over a linebacker, and he just drives that thing directly into the linebacker's chest plate and gets picked off. It's horrible. So he doesn't have that touch throw. You watch him throw a fade, it's erratic as heck. So that touch is not there. The sideline throw is not there. The more difficult throws just are not consistent enough. And the reason I think that is, I think part of it is not unlike the really, really concerning Hendon Hooker thing, where it's just, I don't know, sometimes if he just doesn't know how much power he's supposed to put on things, and he just doesn't have a great feel for it. And that's a thing you kind of have or you don't. By year 5, you probably just don't have it, and that's going to preclude him from being a starter. But there's also a lot of wasted motion in his lower half. So when you drop back, and for more detail on this, you can listen to my How to Scout Quarterbacks, which I put up this last Friday on Locked On Vikings. But when you drop back, what you want to see is whatever the drop back footwork is, whether 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, or whatever, hit the top of the drop, and then you don't want to see a whole bunch of dancing. I don't want to see bouncing up and down. I don't want to see drifting through the pocket. I don't want to see, pitter patter. I don't want to see little steps and little stuff. I want to see your cleats firm in the ground. I want to see you stand there still. And if you do move, it needs to be, if you're moving to evade pressure, to reset a launch point for angles or whatever, that's fine. But whatever, all your movement needs to have intentionality. I need to see that there is a purpose behind this step. And there's a lot of drifting and random steps and random stuff going on. When he sets his feet to throw, he very often sets those feet too far to the left or too far to the right. And the ball goes too far to the left or too far to the right. He will often step in and drive the ball too hard, like what I talked about on that USC interception. There's a whole bunch of little problems in his mechanics that I think some of them can be drilled out, but some of them, it's just like, you know that your ball is going to go where your feet point, and it's not that you accidentally take an open, wide stance and we can drill that out. It's, your stance is good. You just aimed too far left, and you just didn't know where to aim it. That, to me, is a feel thing. So mechanically, there's a lot of issues. And then the other thing is, there's not anticipation. Anticipatory throws are one of the hardest things to find in a quarterback. And the fact that we have 4 QBs, I even think Anthony Richardson shows it to you some, but Will Levis shows it to you a lot. Bryce Young and CJ Stroud show it to you in spades. The fact that we have 4 anticipatory throwers in this class that should go in the 4th round is really, really special and rare. Thompson-Robinson is waiting for stuff to uncover. He needs to see it to throw it. And he sees that it will uncover, and he'll lock in and say, ooh, great, this is going to be there. But he will not pull the trigger until he sees that jersey come clean. I think that's a little bit easier to work on, because I think that's just, you just got to be confident. Hey, no, you are reading this correctly. You can throw this and, everything can tighten up. But not being able to throw with anticipation, you just don't see it. With Thompson-Robinson, as exciting as a lot of the stuff on his tape is, it's what isn't on his tape is more concerning. Now, that doesn't, just because it didn't happen in college doesn't mean he's not capable of it. Maybe the offense just never asked him to throw to the sideline because they were just trying to attack the middle of the field a lot because of the defenses they saw, and maybe it was the game plans. And I didn't watch all of his 5 years of quarterbacking, right? I didn't watch every single game he played. So maybe there's other stuff on it that I'm not getting, but that is a major weakness. So when it comes to being an NFL starter, the standards go up a lot versus being starter at UCLA. If he can become a more consistently accurate passer, and I have serious questions about that, but I don't think that it's nearly as bleak as I think it is with Hendon Hooker. But with both of these guys, I reiterate, I'm a podcaster. Maybe I'm wrong. Whatever. I would love to be wrong. I'd love seeing these kids succeed, right? Especially if they get a lot of hate. But I see that there is a path forward with Thompson-Robinson that turns him into a starter, but you have to parlay like 8 good outcomes for him for it to happen. What I really see, if I'm going to be as realistic as possible about him, I see a lights out, dope as hell backup. I see the coolest backup ever, to the point where he's even somebody that you could, like, if you really wanted to put in a weird option wildcat package, if you wanted to get super, super crazy, like the Saints do sometimes, or, we've seen that kind of peppered throughout the league because his running ability is just so special. And if you have him on your roster, you should try to use it. But think about the world where you draft Thompson-Robinson. Let's say they strike out on all the first round quarterbacks and it's round 4, they take DTR and let's say, God forbid, Kirk Cousins goes down and DTR has to go start a game. You're coming into that game plan with pistol option, QB power. We're going to do the Trey Lance playbook here. Some of the stuff the Bears did with Justin Fields last year, you can kind of start to take that stuff. You can even go full on Ravensy and take some of the Lamar Jackson playbook stuff. The Ravens relied so much on the run game, and therefore they could kind of simplify their pass game into the throws that they knew Lamar Jackson could make. And I think the same thing was happening with Trey Lance in San Francisco before he got hurt. And I think the Bears have done the same thing with Justin Fields. If Thompson-Robinson, if you're like, man, he just can't throw those wide sideline balls as well as he can throw over the middle. Okay, then put through, then design an offense around him. And if you find yourself in a situation where DTR is your starter, I think that you can put together an offense that involves a lot of QB running, a lot of the threat of QB running to open up other run game stuff, and a lot of passing over the middle. That's very similar to Kyle Shanahan things. And we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about how Kyle Shanahan-y things are going to get. So I can see a path forward. It requires you to thread a lot of needles. And for that reason, I'm not taking him in the first couple rounds and expecting him to be a starter. But as a backup, you can have that cool package of plays. You can suddenly have, look, Kirk Cousins goes down, he twists an ankle. They were preparing for Kirk, and now that suddenly they've got this dynamic rushing quarterback out there, right? That's the kind of dynamic, that tonal shift that you want. But the problem is the cost of that, I guess, is you have to install QB. You have to teach the O-line how to block QB power, which is taking precious practice time away from concepts that, maybe they should, that they will be running with the starting quarterback in. So shouldn't we just, focus all of our effort on him? But package of backup plays, right? That's not that uncommon. And I think that there is a path forward where this works. I think that vision is a lot more clear. And I guess to tie this off, to go back to, look, 5-year starter. Why didn't his mechanics get better? Why didn't he get more confident? And, why isn't he able to throw with anticipation? I think I have a great answer to why he is, making post-snap pick-aside reads. And I think that's just the way it works with Chip Kelly. But if I were a team and I were even a little bit interested in drafting a quarterback in this draft, and I were a little bit under 100% confident that I was going to get a quarterback in the first round, which if you're 100% confident that the Vikings will get a quarterback in the first round, I will have what you're having. And, that means that he is going to be an option and you want to gather that info. I'm absolutely bringing him in for a top 30 visit, even if I think the answer to this is going to make me take him off the board. And I'm going to ask, hey, how do you feel about these full field reads? I'm going to show him some full field reads from my playbook and say, what do you think about these? Not can you read it? Because of course they just say yes, but I want to see if he has real thoughts on this concept. Hey, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this versus a quarter structure, a cover 7 structure? What do you think? And just see if he can really see what he gets. And it sounds like his interview process has gone well. So maybe he's doing well in that, but we have no way to really know. We only have the smoke. So I, for all of that, have a 3rd round grade on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. 3rd round grades for a quarterback is not as flattering nearly as a 3rd round grade on, say, a running back, which is the most extreme, or a 3rd round grade on a receiver. Well, okay, I think that guy can be a contributor, right? That can, be on the field as wide receiver 3 for 75% of your snaps. As a quarterback, I'm going, this guy could have a career like Cody Kessler's. I have him above Hendon Hooker for whatever that's where I come down there. I would much rather have this guy as a backup than Hendon Hooker, who feels like he comes with a lot of the same. Well, he was inaccurate. He's an older prospect, 5-year starter that hasn't developed as much as you would expect a 5-year starter to, but just with oodles less upside. So give me the dude with the crazy running floor where he can totally misread, absolutely screw it up. Footwork's a total mess. Pressure comes and gets him because he drifted into someone's pressure and still ripped that thing into a 30-yard play. Give me that guy as a backup where it still kind of gives me a backdoor outcome to win a game where I probably don't have any other business winning that game if like the quarterback goes down. Give me that. And I also think as a 5-year starter and all that experience and stuff, the duties of a backup quarterback and the way that it seems like he intricately understands offenses and actually can, have thoughts on running them. That's, I don't know. I just read that in his play. I think he plays like a real heady quarterback, and heady quarterbacks make good backups, even if they don't necessarily have all the accuracy to be a starter. So I'm into it as a backup, and a third round pick for a backup quarterback with high upside. I'm into that. So that's where I have him. That's probably higher than a lot of people. I think that's way higher than consensus is, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll see what I talk about him. We'll see if news hits or anything. But I think I'm going to get into some of the Shanahan stuff I've been teasing all week and talk about where I think guys like Josh Oliver and CJ Ham fit and why it's going to be so different, why I'm not sure that they're going to prioritize wide receiver as much as people hope that they will, and why that might just be okay. So come on down for it. I will see you all tomorrow. Check out the Locked On Scouting podcast with the Draft Dudes with Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs. We got them in doing Monday through Friday podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.